We are doing something new today, Grundei.
We are broadcasting our podcast live as well as putting it on the plethora of places where you can find our podcast.
Plethora of places.
The
POP.
plethora. Yes.
Right.
And we wanted to do this because we wanted to really showcase our guests and we also wanted to reach more people. So here we are.
Here we are. And thank you, viewers. Now you are more than listeners, you are also viewers. Thank you for being here. It is great to see you. And what I want to say is thanks for your support all of these years. I think it's been this many years, 3 years,
This
that
many.
Meredith Grundei and I have been here showing up, encouraging you to give yourself more permission in your life. So thank you for allowing us that.
So, yes, can I ask a question before we get this party started and we
Well, yes,
introduce the
that's the
lovely
thing a
Gary who's
podcaster
sitting in here?
does.
And Gary
Yeah.
can wave because we can all see you. Uh, I'm curious, and Gary, you can also answer this as well. But Joseph, what is one thing in your life right now that you've been giving yourself permission to do? And we're just about to reach into fall and leave summer behind.
Mm. So inspired by a number of people, I have been putting myself out there. So putting myself out there on social media, putting myself out there with art exhibitions, putting myself out there with 5 books, putting myself out there in the ways that I show up in all of my, what's the word, Meredith? Being fallible, or all of my foibles and fables, whatever it is. Just being human. I'm giving myself to be human. Same question to you, Meredith Grundei.
For me, it has been, I have seen many of friends. I've done a lot of travel this summer, but I have been given myself permission to just be okay when things are slow. That is not easy for me. It is not easy for me to just slow down. So that has been a
Mm.
big deal for me this summer is just allowing myself to enjoy being on these multiple trips that I've been on. Yes, working on my business. Yes, putting myself out there, but not as
Mm.
much as I'm used to doing it. So
Mm.
that's been mine. How about you, Gary?
For me, it's giving myself permission to be accepting of who I am and where I am, giving myself grace to fail, and also being accepting of people and circumstances around me as being exactly what they're supposed to be at that point in
Mm.
time.
Oh, that is huge. Thank you. Thank you.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah,
may
thank
we
you.
all do that. Meredith, can you introduce our guests so our listeners know who this wisdom is coming from?
I would love to. And before that, because this is live, and we get the beauties of the nature of New York City, which is chainsaws and hacksaws, I'm going to shut my window and then come back and do an intro.
Okay. So while she's doing that, I also, oh, look how fast that was.
Just right there. Okay.
Oh,
Are you
because your
ready?
apartment is so big in New
It's
York City.
huge. I live in a palatial apartment in New York City.
Palatial.
Palatial. Okay. So I'm going to introduce Gary. Gary Miles has been practicing law for more than 4 decades, primarily in litigation and more recently in family law. He has been a trial lawyer, managing partner, author, leader, and entrepreneur. He loves helping folks solve their problems, and he is passionate about showing people how to free themselves from the prisons of that entrap them. He has seen the
Mm.
pressures he faces in the legal profession, and he is dedicated to helping his clients achieve fulfillment in their practice. He provides practical tools to help his clients overcome obstacles, freeing them to enjoy the success and freedom they crave. He loves supporting lawyers and lifting the legal profession. He hosts a podcast, The Free Lawyer, which I was a guest on. Thank you.
And an
With
awesome
two
guest at
weekly
that.
thank you. With 2 weekly episodes, and he enjoys his Pinehurst, North Carolina home with his beautiful wife, Brenda, and their 2 beautiful English Goldens. They have 5 children and 5 grandchildren
And one
so
more on the
far.
way.
One
That's right. One more on the
more.
way. Yeah, we're very excited about that. March
Congratulations. It's
1st.
very exciting. Well, welcome, Gary. We're so thrilled to have you as a guest on today's podcast.
Well, I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you both for having me. I think you're both so exciting and dynamic, and it's really fun to be here.
Thank you. So forgive me, Gary, but I know this much about the law, other than the ones that I've broken throughout my young years, but I know nothing about the law. So Who are your clients and how do you serve them?
My clients are other attorneys. And today's legal profession is just filled with stress and overwhelm and competition and money issues, client issues, issues with other attorneys that just creates so much stress and overwhelm. And I've seen a lot of that during my career and kind of learned tools to help people overcome that. So my clients are lawyers in various capacities who are not as happy or successful or fulfilled as they want to be. And my goal is to help them get there, to see what their obstacles are and how to overcome them.
That's huge. So you're kind of like a life coach to lawyers.
Yes, I am.
Is this a new career that you started, or is this like a common thing?
No, it's new for me. It's relatively new in the legal profession, but it's certainly new to me. I was a full-time practitioner for 45 years and relocated from Maryland, where I'm admitted, to North Carolina. And I still practice law. I was up in Maryland last week, but I primarily am downsizing from the active practice and beginning this service. Because I just find it so fulfilling to help so many lawyers who feel like they have no one to talk to, who understands they can't talk to their boss because they may get a black mark. They're afraid to talk to their colleagues because they may talk about them. Their spouse may not understand because he or she's not really in the field. And they need someone who they trust and who has their back and who can support them and hold them accountable too.
So what do you feel, Gary? Because I feel like what you're doing is really important, and you're not the first person I've talked to that has started this profession to help lawyers because of how high pressure that career choice is. So what do you think the most common pain point is for a lawyer who you end up working with?
The biggest one is time for the associates and really for all the partners as well. Most firms are still run on the clock. They're a function of billable hours and hourly rates, and there's an expectation that's actually a requirement that you bill a certain number of hours a year, a month, a day, and they feel so minimized that their worth to the firm is judged by tenths of a second, tenths of a minute, and that at times they feel like they have to maybe even overwork a case to reach that limit. So there's sort of this conflict between the firm and them, where the firm expects them to bill a certain number of hours, which is too many. And then between the client and them, because the client wants their matter done as efficiently as possible. But yet to satisfy the firm needs, there's sort of this pressure to maybe work the file a little bit harder. So all these inherent conflicts in that whole system. And for the lawyers, it can be just overwhelming because they can't take a week's vacation because they're thinking, that's a week I'm not billing. Right. And they're on vacation thinking, what should I be doing instead of being with my family at the beach?
And that's no way to live a life.
Is it true, correct me if I'm wrong, that there's a lot of, not a lot, I'm not going to qualify this, but there's some mental health issues that come into this profession based on what you just shared over the last 2 or 3 minutes, right?
Yeah, there are some very frightening statistics in that arena. An ABA study some years ago, 4 or 5, found 11.9% of the attorneys who responded to the survey had suicidal thoughts in the last year. And if I was answering that survey and the ABA asked me if I had suicidal thoughts, and even if I had, I'm not very likely to say that. So one wonders what the real number is. And to me, that's a very scary statistic. And I've heard different numbers from 25% to 40% of attorneys have substance abuse problems, which is frightening too. I myself am a recovering alcoholic. I've been sober for 32 years. And I've worked a lot with the Maryland Lawyer Assistance Committee. I chaired in my area for about 20 years, where we try to help lawyers and judges who are struggling with mental health issues, whether it was depression or substance abuse. But it is a huge problem. It is a huge problem. And the good news is people are now talking about it. We didn't used to do that. People are now focused on it, and it's getting attention as it should.
Thank you. Yeah. And to back up for just 1 minute for our listeners, ABA is the American Board Association?
American Bar Association. It's the National Association of Lawyers throughout the country.
Okay. Great.
And so I'm curious, and thank you for all of this work you do, because you're not just a coach and a consultant, you're an advocate, which is also a tremendous. So thank you for that service that you do. I'm curious then, if people are coming to you and time is the thing and they have all this pressure coming from their clients, coming from the firm itself, what is the first step that they can start to take? What is it that our viewers and listeners right now can start to do who are feeling that pressure?
The first step is to realize that they're not alone. And they have their resources and people who can help them. So often, I mean, I know when I was struggling with my alcoholism, I thought I was the only person like me. And I found there's a whole world of people like me, all of whom are willing to help me. And for that lawyer who's struggling in their office, feeling like they're stuck and don't know what to do, and they feel so alone, they don't have to be alone. There are people who can help them get through that. And I think that's the single first step, is to realize I'm not alone and there's help out there for me, or support.
On a similar note, have any of your clients become sober based on their work with you?
Not in my recent coaching, but absolutely on the Lawyer Assistance Committee. It would be maybe not appropriate to say solely based on their work with me, because the Maryland lawyer, getting sober is an individual task. I mean, I can't get anyone sober. I don't have that power. It's really up to the individual. But I know for example, the Maryland Lawyer Assistance Committee, I know New York City has a Lawyer Assistance Committee. A good friend, Mike Kasdan, is on that, and they help New York City lawyers. They provide a service and tools and support, but it's the individual who's responsible for their own journey.
Got it.
Thank you. And we'll add those resources to our show notes when we release that too, so that people have those resources to go directly to. So thank you for that, Gary. I'm also curious too. So we talked about time, and you mentioned vacation, like not even being able to have the option. It feels like they don't even feel like they have the option to take a vacation. So what do you say to that client who feels like they are imprisoned essentially to this firm?
Well, I help them to set boundaries, because even though they feel like they can't take a week's vacation, they can and they need to. That a lot of it is a mental thing. If I'm down on the beach with my kids, I'm thinking about work, I'm not present there and I'm not relaxing. And when I go back to work, I'm going to feel just as overwhelmed as when I left, instead of feeling recharged. So I work very hard with them in improving their focus at work, where sometimes they multitask too much. They got too many balls in the air. I'm working and then I get an email from Joseph and I hop on to answer it, and then Meridith calls and I take the call and I'm so distracted and flitting. I help them to be more productive at work and more focused at home when they're with their family or at their child's soccer game or whatever it might be. So setting boundaries and really focusing on work at work and improving our productivity, and then being present with our home when we're there, is what really is important.
Yeah. And I would imagine too that a lot of people, they don't realize that when you choose to work in that way and you're in a reactionary state to everything, then there is an expectation that that's how you work, right? So it's that communication piece that's so important, and not making assumptions about what your boss thinks about you or vice versa. And that to really notice your own patterns, and that you might have possibly created it for yourself.
Yeah, some of those patterns we do create for ourselves. There are some people who are in firms that when they go on vacation, they're expected to be available. They're expected to take calls. And it may be that firm isn't the right place for that person. It may be. There are a lot of firms. I was just reading about someone there. He has a rule that no one works on weekends, because everyone should have that time off. We work hard during the week, but the weekends are yours. So maybe finding a firm where the philosophy fits with yours is important. But so often we create that own pressure on ourselves, either because we want to be more successful or look good to the firm. But often if we just communicate what our abilities and time availability and needs are, we can take care of some of those problems up front.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering about the people that are in law school. Like, is there anybody? So there's all these classes, right? And there's all this information you need to remember. There's all these practicums that you need to do. But is there anybody talking to the lawyers about this is what to expect, and this is how to prepare, and this is how to set boundaries ahead of time? This is how to find a law firm that is, in alignment with who you are. Are those conversations happening? Do you know, brother?
Well, I don't think they're happening enough. I think law school is focused on teaching legal principles and legal analysis. Law school itself is inherently super competitive, in the sense that we all went to college, we all got A's, we all got great grades, we were the stars of our college, and we get to law school and we're all the same. We're all the stars. And law school is graded on a curve, which when I was in high school was like a good thing, but in law school it's not, because everyone deserves an A, but they only give out 10% A's, and people who never got B's before are getting C's, even though they're doing very well. And your ability to get a job afterwards is largely, if not exclusively, determined by your class rank. So if you finish in the bottom half, you'll have a hard time getting that job you want. If you finish in the top 5%, you're made in the shade. So there's this competition that starts in law school that creates some of these pressures that then carry over into the practice.
Well, that needs to change.
It does. It does.
And
Like,
in some of your
there's-
coaching, are you encouraging your lawyers to go out on their own, be entrepreneurs and start their own businesses and their own firms? Is that part of the conversation?
When it's what appears to be the right thing for them, yes. And I have one of those right now where she would be great having her own firm. For others, that's not really what they're driven to do. So with another, I helped her to move from one firm where she wasn't very happy to another firm which is much more suited to her. So it really depends on not everyone has that entrepreneurial spirit. But when they do, you can often do much better in less time and be more satisfied and fulfilled if you're running the firm in a way that's consistent with your principles and your values.
So, Gary, I'm going to shift gears with you a little bit here, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
I want to know your story. Like, what was the moment in time, the one moment in time where you're like, I need to change. Something needs to change. What was that event?
Well, for me, it was in August of 91 when I had been struggling with overcoming my drinking. That's too kind. I was failing daily to stop drinking. And no matter how hard I tried, and everything in life I was successful at. I mean, I felt like I could do whatever I put my mind to. I was very smart. I was very determined. But at that, I was a complete failure. And my turning point for me was when we had a birthday party for my son. And I made my mind up I wasn't going to drink. Ended up, I got very drunk and had a very personal conversation with my 15-year-old goddaughter, which is unusual. But she shared everything with me about some topic and asked me what it was. I don't know. I woke up the next day and I didn't remember anything about it. And that was my first time I had what I identified as being a blackout, what I now know to be a blackout. And it scared me because it was the next huge step in how alcohol affected me, and scared me because I've always been pretty smart and I'd remember what happened the night before and I knew something was wrong if I didn't. And that was what really made me think I just couldn't go on like that any longer.
So what I'm noticing, Meredith, is all of the love and the support and the openness and the wisdom that Gary is sharing with lawyers, but you and I can both agree that it is probably a whole lot of other people that he's sharing his wisdom and his heart with. And I just want to say thank you, because in all professions, people are struggling, right? And you have taken it upon yourself by different decisions and different experiences to say, I want to help this population. I know what it's like to be in the trenches. I know what it's like to be so competitive and to not measure up and to maybe be addicted to something. So you are helping to heal future generations as well as this generation, and I applaud you.
Well, thank you, Joan. And I truly, truly appreciate that. But honestly, it was a gift from someone much more powerful than me who showed me the way, and the gift of many others who shared their stories with me that made me realize it was possible, because others who may be listening may feel this way, but I got to a point where I couldn't see my life going on the way it was, but I also couldn't see the alternative. Like I couldn't imagine my life any longer drinking, but I could not visualize a happy life not drinking. And it was the stories of others who came before me who shared that made me realize, well, if it worked for him or her, it could work for me too.
Mm. And Gary, I'm just going to reemphasize being the public speaking coach that I am, and who is a firm believer that when we feel courageous and brave enough and in a healthy enough spot to share our stories, that we can truly heal the world. And you are a testament to that. And you just shared that that is what helped you overcome adversity. So I want to say thank you for that. And thank you for sharing your story with us. And please continue to share your story and encouraging others to do the same. And before we close out this wonderful conversation, I would love to know if there is an action step that you can give our viewers and listeners right now that they can use to help themselves take that one step forward and give themselves that permission they need.
Well, it's a step that's the most important to me in a daily life. And the principle I tell myself is grateful people don't resort to alcohol, for me. And if I'm grateful, I'm not going to resort to picking up a drink to feel happy. And I know with my clients, I've seen a lot of lawyers who have so many gifts and so many blessings in their life, but they're miserable. And so the action step that I give them, it's actually two, but it's a practice of gratitude. It has two components. The first is every day for 30 days, I ask them to write down 3 different things they're grateful for. So the first day is pretty easy. I have a great wife. I have a great dog. I have a second great dog. There's 3. But after about 20 days, you have to think of 3 different things, and you begin a search for gratitude. You're searching for something in your life that day that you can be grateful for. And at the end of a month, you've written down 90 different things that you're grateful for. But more than that, your whole perspective on life has changed, because you're not searching for who's the one person who annoys me or the one circumstance that frustrates me. You're searching for something to be grateful for. And then each day, I ask them when they are ready to retire to bed to think about what happened that day that was good. What were they grateful for that happened that day? Instead of focusing on the frustrations that someone dropped the ball and what things happened that day that you're grateful for. And waking up by putting those 3 things down and going to bed thinking of what things that day were good, put them in a much better state of mind. And they become almost immediately happier and content with their life.
Bing Crosby, count your blessings instead of sheep, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Joe.
Beautiful. Thank you. And where can people connect and find you? And also, can you tell us about your book?
Sure. So my book that I've written a chapter in a book that had to do with the impact of COVID on folks, but I'm coming up with a book now that it's almost finished being written to be released the next couple months called Breaking Free, and how lawyers can achieve personal and professional freedom in their lives. And I have 12 chapters on the prisons of our mind, comparison, expectations, fear, living in the past, living in the future, and 12 keys to unlock those prisons: acceptance, gratitude, etc. And that should be out in the next couple of months. My website is GaryMiles.net. I'm very active on LinkedIn under my name, Gary Miles, and you can reach me at my website or by email at gary@GaryMiles.net.
Great. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you.
Thank you both. You guys are awesome.
Thanks. Meredith, you look stunningly beautiful as always.
Aww.
And we are live out here now. We have listeners and viewers. So excited about that transition.
Me too. Thank you. Thank you, Miles. Gary. I wanted to call you Miles. Gary Miles. And thank
My
you, Joe.
pleasure. Be well.
Bye.